Hey guys, thanks for joining me. If you are listening to this on the podcast, hey. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hello. Look, here's the deal. I have my friend Bobby. Bobby, how do I say your last name?
Jones, Bobby Jones.
Bobby Jones, but no, that's not. What's the other one?
Bobby Bugatti.
Bugatti. Okay, so I have a confession. Every time I say it, do you know the song, I pull up in Maserati?
That's I pull up in my new Bugatti, that one?
No, isn't it Maserati? Shut up.
I woke up in a new Bugatti, that one?
That's it.
Yeah, by Ace Hood. That's my intro when I do shows.
Wow, I should have really Googled that before. Now I feel like an idiot. So
no, you're fine. So Bobby Bugatti is not actually my real name.
Bobby Jones.
It's my music name. Yeah, Bobby Jones is actually my real name.
Ah, I understand.
Robert, actually.
And so you speak, you do music.
Yep.
What else?
I just founded a youth conference.
Nice. Which one?
Well, it's called. We're just literally newly started. Our first event will be in October. Our first youth conference is called the DRIP Initiative, the DRIP Youth Conference. Disciple, Release, Initiate, and Pour Out.
Love it.
So, cool. Yeah. I run an online program connecting families, bringing healthy relationship back to families. Yeah.
Couple different things, couple buckets.
A few different situations.
Yeah. That's so cool. And look, and I invited you to talk today simply because I know that if you're listening to this or watching this, you know probably about my story of just battling with alcohol addiction and finding the Lord through that. And I know you have not the same story, but a similar kind of I don't know, story. And so similar stories. And so look, before you tune off, if you're listening to this, don't. We are going to talk about alcohol addiction today and just how it impacts our walk with Christ, but also our generation as a whole. And so I just want to encourage you to stay, whoever you are. So, Bobby, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get it.
All right. Tell people a little bit about yourself outside of what you do.
Yeah, so I grew up in South Dakota, Yankton, South Dakota, middle child. My brother is about a year older than me. My sister is 3 years younger than me. So I grew up kind of not feeling comfortable in my own skin. I was always compared to my older brother. And, as I journeyed through life, I tried to find ways to fit in. It was kind of harder to do that. So I kind of realized as I got to high school, sophomore year, I realized, you know what? Everyone expects me to be like my brother. I'm going to be exactly the opposite of him, but I'm going to do something that no one can take from me. And so I decided to make football a thing for me that no one could take. And I ended up, excelling on the field and I'm going to a junior college at a high school and I'm receiving a bunch of scholarship offers. And I chose to go play football at Michigan State University. And I got in a lot of trouble off the field and fell into some bad stuff, including alcohol being one of them. And, I journeyed through this thing called life for a long time. And it was about 8 years ago when I heard the gospel. And I said, if I can have access to that, I want it. And not only do I want it, but I need it. And here I am.
So I want you to talk a little bit about identity, because I think that, we do that. We claim a sport as our own, or we put our identity in something. And just tell people a little bit how your identity has transformed since over the last 8 years through Christ.
Yeah, that's good. So my identity was wrapped up in football. My identity was so wrapped up in it when it didn't work out, because I was trying to, make it, quote unquote. When it didn't work out, that day it all ended for me. I was like, I have nothing to live for. I have nothing. I thought football was the only thing I could succeed in. And so that really was a big hit to me. And that's what drove actually addiction for a while. Yeah. And then, when I met Jesus, I was like, okay, this is some place where I can fit in and I just have to show up. And so as I've walked through this journey, yes, it has been a process, really coming into your identity and who you are in him, because we're going to act as what we are. Right. And so if we think we're anything else, that's how we're going to act. Yeah. But as you come into the image of Christ, we continually are knowing that, okay, I'm not that old person anymore. Yep. And you don't feel that. Right. It changes right out. We can't explain it. It just happens.
Yeah.
as we continue to be made more like him, that's when we're able to walk out in the power and authority and destiny that he wants for us.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah. And I love what you say about, like, you don't know it happens, like it's so sudden. And I was reading, was it in John chapter 1 yesterday, where Jesus comes to Nathaniel, and Nathaniel's like, yo, how do you know me? And Jesus like, man, I saw you before you saw you. Like, and that's what it is. And I wish that I just like, man, I pray that like people that don't know the Lord could get a glimpse of that. Even if it's in today's episode, like something happens and it's just not explainable.
Yeah. It's supernatural.
It's crazy.
You can't put a finger on it. And before you know it, you start not recognizing yourself.
Yeah.
And your desires are changing. You're like, what is happening to me? But the heart exchange of what he says, he'll switch out that heart stone.
Yeah.
What he does, he softens it, and only Jesus, the blood of Jesus, can literally break down the walls of the toughest, roughest people.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I know, like, for me at least, walking through it, I had believed in Jesus. Like, I had known he'd existed my whole life, but until I gave up alcohol, I didn't start making better choices. And I think we live with that guilt. For those that believe in Jesus and make really bad choices, it's this constant battle of feeling like you're just not enough or you're not doing enough. And it wasn't until I got sober-minded. It's like the Bible tells us to do these things. I don't get it.
Right.
Oh my gosh. But until I was able to go there, I couldn't see what God had for me. And it's so much more than,
Yeah, it's way more. And that's the biggest thing. It's, there was a stint where I fell back into the alcohol after I was saved.
Yeah.
I got saved in 2012 and 2013. I actually fell back in for about a year and a half. And, it was a terrible place to be. It was very confusing. I would say a little bit, it shook my faith because I'm like, God, how am I back here? Like, I thought that you told me I would have a better life and different things like that. Yeah. And you just don't see it clearly. You don't, right. You won't see it clearly. You won't operate well. You won't make good choices, but that's how sin works.
Right.
When you're falling into sin and you're partaking in the things that are sinful, you run faster towards it. Yeah. And your common sense takes off. Like you don't make those conscious decisions anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to pause here because I think this right here is really important. This idea that like I fell back because there's such a, I don't know if it's a stereotype. I'm not sure what it is, but like, well, once I accept Jesus, things get better and things get easier. And we see it all the time where things sometimes get harder. Sometimes people slip back into old patterns. And so I would love, can you tell us a little bit about how you got out of that cycle? What did you do?
Can I tell you what I think about that?
Yeah.
This is what I honestly believe.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that if we fall back, God's trying to get our attention.
That's good.
And he's trying to break us all the way down, so we have to come to him. Because if he wants us, he'll get us.
Right.
And I believe that's what it was, because you can get saved right away, but you have so much world in you still that you still make worldly decisions, right? Well, there comes a point where God has a call in your life. It happened to you and it happened to me. There's a call in your life. He's like, okay, I need to get your attention fully. Yep. And so I believe that he doesn't make it, but he allows it to happen. He allows it to happen. So we fall back into it, and then we're literally coming to the end of ourself.
Yeah.
Well, when we get to the end of ourself, there's only one thing to do, and that's cry out to the Lord.
Right. Absolutely.
I believe that's what it is. And, but that fall back, it's one of those situations where for me is when I really saw the sustaining power of Jesus. Yep. Because I could have gotten so much trouble in that year and a half. I drove so many times. I was a drunk driver. I drove a lot. I have 2 DUIs. I should have 10. I'm going to be honest with you. And, but I got behind the wheel a lot. Yep. Nights I couldn't see. Like, it was crazy. But I feel like his grace at that time was sufficient.
Right.
I really believe that's what sustained me and kept me out of more trouble. until I finally got to the end one night and I felt him in the room, and that was the turning point. And I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
I surrendered all to him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it was for me. And I just knew that I couldn't go my way anymore. Real
Right.
quick, reiterate that question before I
Yep.
said what I said. Reiterate that question that you asked me. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Just this, how, like specifically speaking,
Yep.
what did that step look like after you had fallen back? What did it look like? Did you let people in? Did you do something? What was it in you that said something has to change? Blank.
Yeah. When I finally made the turn, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was about a year and a half after when I initially fell. I got hurt in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
My whole trust was in that relationship. My whole trust was in that person, and I fell back, and and then I went off running, into just things I shouldn't have done. But the turning point was for me, it was December 29th, 2014. I remember that day because my brother, he worked for the University of Nebraska.
That's weird. Hold up. That's like, well, I'm 2017.
Really?
That's weird. Okay,
Wow.
continue. That's weird.
That is crazy.
Okay, continue.
So my brother worked for the University of Nebraska Cornhuskers. He was a strength conditioning coach of the football team. They were playing the Pacific Life Holiday Bowl. So they were playing the game. I had been drinking all day long. That night I ended up at my boss's house. I drove to the bar. I shouldn't have drove.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up at the end of that night with no money. And I was drunk, and I was just trying to go. And my parents were up visiting. I was living with my sister at the time. And I said, hey, I called my mom. I was like, can you just come get me? Usually my mom tears me apart for those things, so I just was going to take it. But she didn't do any of that. We got home, and I sat down, talked to my mom and my dad, and literally got 2 sentences out and just lost it.
Yeah.
And I started bawling. And my mom later admitted, she goes, I'd never seen Bobby like that, and it broke my heart.
Mm.
And it was that night, after I just broke down, she had grabbed me and held me for the first time in 10 years.
Wow.
When it came to my addiction. And I just cried in her arms, and I could feel God in the room with us.
That's so
and 2
good.
days later, I went to treatment.
Yeah.
And I got on my knees, and I said, I'm done doing this my way. We have to do this your way.
Yeah.
I haven't looked back since.
Well, and I think it takes to, what you say about like hitting that rock bottom place, because until you get to that last place where you're like, I've got nothing left. Like,
Right.
I'm just done.
Right.
And you almost get done being done. I don't know how to like say that, but I probably was done so many times before, like I was done being done.
Right.
Right. And I always try to tell people, like, when they're like, I'm just at my lowest point, and I see all these, like, you got friends, you see a series of events, and it's just like one after another, and you can just look at them and you're like, the Lord is trying to get your attention, and he will get your attention, and he won't move you until he gets your attention.
He will, and it's going to be painful.
Right.
If we don't turn. Oh,
but
yeah.
I love nothing more than watching people turn, because the Lord will turn them. He just,
It's amazing. It's one of the best things to watch, and people, I don't know what's happening. I do. I've been there and know exactly what's happening. And
one of my new favorite ways to pray is, I read this book called Intercessory Prayer. Highly recommend it. And it talked about how if you pray for the Holy Spirit to hover, change will happen faster. And I was like, no way. Like, I'll pray specifics, this God, this. Right. But biblically, when the Holy Spirit hovers, new life is formed. So I started praying this radically over some people. And I'm like, I'm sitting on Instagram and I'm like, I know you did not just post that.
Come on.
My gosh.
Come on.
It's so good. So I don't know.
That's amazing.
It's all the things. So tell people a little bit, because you speak to a ton of students. And so I would love to just kind of hear 2-minute synopsis, maybe shorter. What do you tell them before I've got a ton of high school students that will listen to this. And so snapshot. So
my main talk is on choices and consequences. And I say talent will take you, or character won't keep you. And I share my story, and I give them 5 things to take away. I was literally months away from the NFL. On paper, there's no way I shouldn't have been in. And I give them 5 things to take away at the end of it. And that's just knowing who you are, putting your past behind you, changing your friends if you need to, finding people that know a little bit more than you as a mentor. And then the last thing is give it back. And, I just go in and how the choices and consequences, how literally one day they show up and you can't run from those consequences, no matter if you think you're getting away with something at the point in time. Literally one day, it could be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, those consequences will show up at your door. They'll knock on it and they'll have a notepad in hand and there'll be a past due amount. And the past due amount that's due, you probably won't be able to pay it.
Yeah.
And then that's just what I share, and I go into the story.
Yeah.
And then I have a year 2 talk called I Need Help, and I
Right.
talk about how the I need help is the 3 best words I ever said, and those were the words that changed my life.
Yeah. I would love, okay, I want to pick up 2 things here. First of all, let's talk about changing friends.
Yeah.
And then I want us to go back to this I need help specifically related to guys.
Yeah.
I don't have a massive guy following. Shout out to my girls. But I do have some guy friends that listen. And so I want to first tackle the changing friends because I had to do the same thing and it was so painful.
Yeah.
It was so worth it. So painful.
See, for me, it was a little different. Like, it wasn't as painful as maybe it was for you, but it was worth it. For me, I was to the point where I was done.
Yeah.
And so I was willing to do everything. That's what some people don't understand. When I tell people I literally changed everything, I changed everything.
Yeah. Did you cut cold turkey? Like, were you
Oh,
just?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
was too. That's the only way.
I blocked numbers.
Yep.
I didn't announce it on Facebook or anything. I blocked numbers. I stopped going to the same places.
Yep.
I would commit. I had to make commitments to go to church Wednesday, Sunday, every month, every week. That turned into a month, 3 months, 6 months. And I just committed to do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And find the right people. And in that journey, God brings you people.
Yeah.
That are way better suited for you anyway, and that want the best for you.
Right.
And that's what I experienced on that.
Well, and it's so interesting because I actually have not talked to somebody that had such an extreme, I had the same way. I cut cold turkey. There was actually one day in my sobriety where I was like, I can't do this. And I will never forget, I was living with this girl, Alyssa, and we were sitting on the couch and she looked at me and she said, Brittany, you have to do this. And she wasn't like doing this with me, nothing. Like, it made no sense for her to say this. And she just like, in such a calm voice, she was like, you're going to do this and you're going to stay sober. And I had only committed to a year. And I was like, 1 year, Lord, I'll give you my life. I'll see what I think after that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to talk about this because I have a lot of people that listen and they're like, well, I want to be closer to God. And it's so hard to I don't think dialect is the right word, to discuss this idea that like getting closer to God in an extreme way takes extreme measures.
Oh yeah.
You can't tiptoe around it.
Yeah. It literally, it's going to cost you everything.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you everything. Like, literally, like, there's people even in Christianity, Britt, that early on, like, said they were going to be on this journey with me. They're no longer here.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, you have to decide that your relationship with Jesus first, and then the call that he's placed on your life second, is more important than anything else you encounter along the way. And that's when you get the results. And that's when we see when he can use you, because when he has your whole heart, that's all he's looking for. He's not looking for a resume. He's looking for a heart. And when he has your whole heart, then he can say, okay, I can use you now.
Right.
And that's what it takes. Getting close, it's extreme measures. And, it's cutting out the alcohol. It's cutting out the toxic friends. It's not going to the same places, not doing the same things. It's going to cost you everything. But I'm telling you, all God is asking you to do, and I love this, Todd White says this. He says, all God is asking you to do is to give up and give up something that you were never created to be anyways.
Right.
Ooh. You know what I mean? And that was big. I'm like, oh my gosh, when I heard that. And that's all he's asking us to do, giving up something we were never created to be anyways. We were always created to be his and made in his image. And so it does take extreme measures, but a lot of people have a hard time dying to themselves to do that.
Especially in an individualistic society like America is specifically. Because everybody wants to be their own version of themselves. And we forget that, like, God has called us to a specific, like, that doesn't mean we're all going to be the same.
No.
That means morals and values line up. So I want you to talk specifically to the person that would say to that, Bobby, there's no call on my life.
I would say that there may not be a call in your life yet, or you just don't know it.
Yeah.
You know, so let me just share what happens when you give your life fully to Jesus. I wasn't a rapper until 6 years ago.
Okay.
I didn't know I had the gift.
Okay.
God revealed it to me.
Yeah.
I was sitting there one day and I was still actually struggling with alcohol.
Mm.
That's how you know that God speaks to your destiny, not your history. I was still struggling with alcohol. And I was like, how can I get free from this? I can't start speaking yet because I'm not there. And literally, I felt the Holy Spirit drop into my spirit. You're going to make an album about your life.
Mm.
And so I made a 5-song EP called The Freedom to Bondage. And that's what started my music ministry. And but I didn't know I had that gift.
Right.
I had so there's things, the person that, if you were to say that, there's things that you won't know, that you won't discover until you keep coming in fully to Jesus. And as you continue to come in, he will reveal those things to you. You think I thought I was going to be traveling the world?
Right.
There's no way. I've been in 2 countries in the last 5.5 years. I've been all over the United States. I never thought that I could do that.
Right.
That's what happens when God gets a hold of it.
Yeah.
I can't do it, but he's made me capable to do it.
Right. And there's something so important about, like, there's this waiting window, you know, where I think we try to force. I love what you said earlier. I didn't put it on Facebook. Praise God. Because it's like, you know, I think we want to make everything public. That's like our human tendency, but not because we want it public, but because we want the instant gratification. And the truth about it is that sobriety, walking with the Lord, anything, it takes time. You know, if somebody were to ask me my biggest pet peeve, it's when somebody runs 1 mile and they tell you that they're training for a marathon. Train for the marathon. And then tell us how far you ran. Like, train first.
Train first.
And then because otherwise we're susceptible, we're vulnerable, and now we're trying to please people, and are we doing it? And it's so complicated. And I just our generation has to get this, that it's not all to be public.
No, you're right. And I have a different stance on calling anyways. I think I could get in trouble for saying this, but I think that a lot of people put themselves in a calling.
Yeah, I agree.
My calling, I was 3 years in to this walk. Wasn't trying to get a stage, wasn't trying to do anything. I was trying to live a better life than the one I was living. Yeah. And I ended up literally in the middle of it. Here's how it happened. I'll tell you. So it's a crazy story how that happened, how speaking happened. 8 months after I was sober, I was called to help my high school coach's nephew get into treatment. He was addicted to Oxycontin, so I helped. A week later, I get a call from my coach. He says, "Hey, thank you for doing that. I would love for you to come and speak to the team about addiction and your story." I was like, "Sure." So 3 months later, I drove 3.5 hours south to the Nebraska-South Dakota border. And I spoke on the last day of fall camp, and they shared a picture. Someone else contacted me and said, "Hey, can you come speak to my kids?" That happened about 3 or 4 more times. And finally I was like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And for me, my journey around the same time, it started to kick off a little bit when I didn't even know it was kicking off. I got fired from a full-time job, and I heard on the way to HR, God said, "It's time to go. I'm launching you out."
So good.
And, I ended up in the middle of my calling, not even knowing.
But you were almost forced out. And I think that's how my mentor beat this into me, where when it's from God, you won't have to put yourself on the platform. You'll be asked to come. Yep. And that's I try to tell people, if they're like, how do I discern what's from God and what's not? If you have to put yourself there, I would check your heart. But when they call for you, and we see this in the story of King David, they called for him. And over and over again in the Bible, they call for them, and then they're elevated to that place. But we, as a human race, want to elevate ourselves and be like, "I'm arrived." And God's like, "No, you ain't." Right. Well,
and that's just it. And you can't have the palace without the process. Yes. And if you get the palace without the process, you won't stay in the palace. Right. Because where God wants to take some people, I was literally told a month ago, "Bobby, God has been building your foundation. because where he's about to take you, I'm telling you, haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
He goes, but where he's taking you, you don't want to go without it.
Right.
And so that's the biggest thing. They will call for you, like you said.
Yep.
If it's from God, there's nothing you have to do.
Yeah.
There's nothing you have to do. Literally, someone will stumble upon your number or whatever it is. You know, have you heard the story of Michael Todd and Stephen Furtick?
Yes.
That's a
Love
crazy
it.
story.
I love it.
Stephen Furtick was on YouTube,
Right.
watching one of his own sermons. The next one up was Michael Todd's.
Right. And he only had like 2,000 people then. It wasn't like where it is now.
And it wasn't even, he wasn't even viral yet. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, God will do it.
Right.
He will put you in rooms with people that you have no business being in rooms with, but you'll be there.
Right. Absolutely.
This is what he does.
Right. It's who he is.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, and it makes it so much sweeter, I've found.
Oh, man.
It's
his story.
Yeah.
And that's the testimony that he gives you, because there's no way that someone could say you did it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Good stuff. All right, let's merge lanes. We're gonna I want to talk a little bit about and I know we've talked about this a lot, because there is this man, I don't even know how to word this. I thought it was just millennials. So I was talking to my mom, and she's like, it's not millennials, it's everybody. Like, everybody faces this, where there's this wild acceptance of alcohol. And I think I really don't know any other way to say that, where like to not drink or the odd duck out. And like, I feel this all the time in places and with different crowds or anything. And I know we kind of touched on what it looks like to go cold turkey and all of that, but can we talk about maybe the root issue for I would love to speak to our generation right now, because it's a root issue. There's a heart problem that I think we're not facing. And so let's just dialogue a little bit about that, because I would love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, if we relate it back to me, I think a lot of it was sense of belonging, wanting to fit in. You know, for me, it was more comfortable talking to people socially. And it felt good. And another thing was I was a number. I used to numb my pain. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. There's a lot of pain that people have literally inherited through whatever situation it may be, and they want to numb it, you know. Because it's one thing about having a beer or a glass of wine, but if you're drinking to excess to get completely messed up, and here's the deal. Now, I'm just going to say this right now before anyone jumps on this. Me and you've been there. We can talk about this. We can talk about this. We've been on both sides.
Right.
I used to be excessive drinker. You know, so I can talk about this, and you can talk about this. And so when you get to the point where you're excessive drinking, then you got to understand there's a bigger issue, and it's something you're running from, you're hiding, you don't want to deal with. You know, so I think there's a lot of those factors that play in it, a lot of pain that people are trying to hide, a lot of pleasure that people are trying to hide, you know, socially more accepted. There's a lot of different things. And the fact that they're trying to look to something else that's satisfiable that will never be.
Well, and I feel like it's what I struggle with the most is I look back at the things I laughed at and the things I thought were funny. Usually the next day, you know, so it'd be like, oh, blacked out last night.
Right.
So but it's true. And that was my dialogue. And I look back and I'm like, those were so many red flags. Like, there's nothing funny about that. And I think the older we get, the more we see that. Like, I'm with you. I don't have a DUI, praise God, but I probably could have gotten at least 25, you know, and we don't see that as a problem in our generation. It's like normal. And I think the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I just know so many people that struggle with this, that don't want to talk about it, that maybe are really uncomfortable right now, us talking about it, and want to turn this off. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just there's just a root issue when we drink excessively. That we're not facing. So for guys, I would love to hear your perspective. For guys, what do you think is like at the core of that root issue?
You know, it's hard. I think for everyone it's different. I don't think it's necessarily just for guys or girls. Like, I think each individual person is different. Like, I know, you know, I have a buddy that's in treatment right now, and we were in treatment the first time together, May 1st, 2011. That was the
Wow.
first time I went to treatment. He's back in treatment. He's only quit drinking like 2 years of that whole time, and
Mm.
he's back in treatment. And I just talked to him recently when it started getting bad. He just called me drunk, crying. He's like, "Man, I don't know what's going. Like, this is bad, Bobby." He's back in treatment. For him, I think the biggest thing for that, he asked me, "Why am I always here?" I was like, "Bro, because you won't get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Like, I love you, but you won't get out of your own way. You have to do it your way all the time. And there's certain things that you're seeking for satisfaction, bro. That obviously, like, look, you've made the money. That's obviously not fulfilling you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I was like, you got to get out of your own way, bro. And so there's a lot of, I think each situation is different. I think there may be some, issues, maybe the pressures of being a man today in
Yeah.
our world. I know it is harder to date
Right.
today and
Yeah.
find that mate, that spouse, than it's
Oh, we
ever
could
has
do a
been.
whole episode.
Frustrating,
You could do a whole episode on it.
frustrating, Brent, but there's so many different avenues. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I can just one of
Yeah.
those things. But I can tell you this, for someone that maybe struggling with it and maybe on the borderline watching this, I want to share a couple things with you real quick. So back in 2008, I lived in Colorado for a little while, or 2009, and I moved back to South Dakota and I lived with a guy, and we used to drink together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I went on my path. He went on his path. Just 2 years ago, he died to cirrhosis of the liver.
Mm.
He never quit, And I look back like that could have easily been me.
Yeah.
And then I had another buddy that I first moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota in 2008. When I first moved there, I used to hang out with him all the time. He was a DJ at the club that I bounced at all this time. Just a few years back, it's probably been 5 years now. They found him slumped over in a parking lot. He dead, heart attack, because of the lifestyle he was living.
Right.
I'm telling you, it may not seem that it's a problem or whatever, but I promise you, like, there are things that can happen that you won't even know it's coming,
Right.
and all boom,
Right.
it's there, and it's a bigger problem than we know. I'll be honest, I don't like it in Christianity. I don't like it at all. I think it can ruin people's witness, and that's just my take on it, my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But if you have a beer or a glass of wine, that's on you. For me, I chose not to deal with it anymore at all, and I don't need it.
Yeah.
Jesus. So.
And there's something so true to that, like, because there really are people that they can have one or two and they're totally fine. That was not my case. And I think for a lot of young people, that's not the case. Where
No, it's
and maybe this is the first time somebody's hearing, like, in my early 20s, I drank to get drunk, like, no problem at all. And I think when we stop and we look at that and we say, that's gotta be a deeper issue. But the thing is, it's so widely accepted.
right.
And so, it's getting really, like, again, like, praying for those rock bottoms. I will never forget. And I've written this story a few times, but there was a friend that called me June of 2017. And she said, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for you." And I was like, "Thank you. Appreciate that." She was like, "Oh no, I'm praying you hit rock bottom and, like, you crumble, because I believe there's a call on your life and you will miss it." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you." Like, it was so, but I look back at that moment and I crumbled multiple times after that before I got to the feet of Jesus and really, like, let him in. But I look at that and I'm like, what does it look like to be the kind of friends that will call that and say, "I'm going to pray, but I'm going to pray you keep breaking because I want you healed."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I had a friend tell me one time, "I am willing to risk our friendship for you to get everything that God has for you."
Ooh, that's a good line.
And that broke me, because it's like, wow, those are the friends that you need. Those are the people that literally, will tell you, like, this is what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, if you're listening to this and you have friends that tell you yes to everything, run as far and as fast away as you can, because those are the friends that are going to get you in a bad heap of mess.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you do not want to be there. You want the friends that will call you on your crap. And that's what it comes down to. You need the people that are going to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And I've also found so much joy in my friends that, because not all of my friends, some of my friends, they love me when I was wild. They love me when I wandered, and they love me now when I worship Jesus. They just love me. And I appreciate that.
Yep.
You know, and I look back at, there's a couple moments that I'm like, what type of friends do we need to surround ourselves with that when you're at your lowest point, they're like, I'm for you and I'm right here, you
Yeah.
know, and to hold that space to say
Yeah.
it's okay if you're absolutely broken. I'm not going
Right.
anywhere,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah. It's the friends that won't judge you.
Yeah.
It's the friends that will love you. And it's the
Right.
friends that will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And those are the friends that you need around you. And it's a free, you need to have that safe place to be broken. Those are the friends that you're going to want around you, because there will come a point where, it all happens. I talk about defining moments in our life,
Yeah.
and a defining moment, how it's defined is things that we come up against in our life, that how we handle those will shape the course of our life going
Yeah.
forward.
For
I
sure.
believe we have, 5 to 10 of those. Just depends on how many. Some might be more, some might be less. But the defining moments when you come up against the fork in the road, which way you're going to go, it determines the course, of where you go down.
Yep.
You know.
Absolutely. Okay, I've got a totally off the wall question. You
Sure.
talked about in this process, you deleted a lot of numbers. Did you tell them you were deleting them?
Nope.
No. Okay. I know it's such a weird question, but sometimes like, go ahead.
Yeah, blocked, gone.
Wow, you're a blocker. I'm not brave enough.
Not so much anymore. You gotta call me out, right? I don't block just to block. You silly girl. But if I have to block, I'll block. If I have to block, I'll block. I mean, think about this. 10 years of turmoil that tore me and my family apart.
Yeah.
10 years of, gosh, I don't know how I'm still here. It affected me in every way. I had to make the change. I had to do everything. And so, no, I didn't tell them. And some of those friends I had to just distance from for a while. A lot of them guys come to me for advice now, because they've seen what I do, but you're going to step into my world. I'm not stepping into yours.
Right.
We're going to go eat. Let's go eat.
Right.
But I'm not far with you. Like, we're not, but people know, like, as you get on a good path, there's people that used to know you back in the day that are still in that path.
Yeah.
I had one of we're kind of cool, like not boys, but we're boys. I remember one night him telling me, like 2 years ago, he goes, bro, you have to stay on this path.
Yeah.
Because it gives us hope.
And that's it. It's like there's people in there that are like, I need you to keep going. I can't tell you how many times, like there have been so many times over the last few years that I've been like, man, I would just love a glass of wine. But there's something about leadership that you can't be casual.
Right.
And you already start, like, personally, both of us, like, we've already started walking this road. And so you can't go back now. Like, there's too much of, you got skin in the game.
Yeah. It's too much to lose. It's you got to count the cost and everything that you do.
Yeah.
And now I look at all the people that has gotten something from my story. I look at, those kids, and I look at, other people around me that have seen it and that have given them hope. There's more. It's not about me anymore.
Right.
It hasn't been about me in a long time. It's about other people. And so that's what it is. And so for me, it's counting the cost, and it's not going to be worth to lose everything, because us. It takes so long to build something up, but takes so little to tear it down.
Right. Isn't that
I'm just not willing to go after that. I'm willing to stay where I'm at, and at the end of the day, I've tasted it, you've tasted it, and we want it all.
Yeah.
That's the type of people we are.
Well, and there's something so true about this idea that, like, it takes so much to build up and 1 second to build down. And I look at, one thing I reflect on a lot is, like, what would have happened if I would have hit somebody while I was under the influence? I would be in prison right now.
Yeah.
And that's like a one little 33 millisecond mistake alters the whole course of your life. And so I love what you're saying about this. So good. Any final thoughts before we close off today?
No, I just, I want to just challenge everybody and encourage everybody to, search your heart in this.
Yeah.
If you listen to this and you have a problem with anything, search your heart and, find out what you want in your life. What legacy do you want to leave behind? What example do you want to be for people, at the end of the day? And what do you want to do for yourself?
Yeah.
or in your life. You know, we can only walk a path so long before it ends anyways. As far as like, you know, the bad path you go down, coming to the end of yourself, it always ends one day.
Yeah.
You know, and so at the end of the day, what are you doing now to set yourself up for the future self? You know, what are you doing now to leave the legacy that you want to leave behind?
So
You
good.
know.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do this again. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you for having me
Yeah.
on. Thank
No
you.
problem. No problem. Look, yeah, let's do this again. Thank you so much for hanging out today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's it.
All right.
That's the episode. We
That's
talked
it.
all
I
the-
like it.
All right. Tell people you'll see you later. You'll see them later.
All right, everybody. I'll see y'all later. Have a blessed week.